just wanted to do a quick video about our experience of trying to get a passport for our son, and about differences between getting a passport for our son and something called a certificate of a right of abode. Because I didn't know anything about this right of abode certificate when we first started, and it is a lot easier to get, much quicker, but I'll go through both the processes first of getting your passport and versus getting this certificate of right of abode. This was for our son, which I think he was only 1 month old at the time, doing the process for this. So obviously it's going to be different for an adult, some differences, but I think that most of it would be similar requirements. So passport, I mean, I think the main problem with the passport that we found was, I mean, the estimated time of processing was 4 months. And as I was trying to get my wife over here at the same time on a spouse visa, it was, I mean, I was reading things in forums where minimum of 4 months, 6 months, some people even 1 year processing time to try and get a passport, you know, for their child to come over with their wife. A bit ridiculous, really, when it, you know, so many months processing. So what? Yeah, in the end we actually did the certificate of right of abode. Much easier, much quicker. It's a little bit more expensive to get the certificate of right of abode. I'll go for the prices. I think the certificate of right of abode was £372, and they've actually just reduced it. Surprisingly, they've actually just reduced the price of a passport. This is for an overseas passport. So my son was overseas, actually in the Philippines. Different prices if you're here in the UK. So that would be £53. So it is cheaper for the passport, but obviously, as you would expect, it's very difficult, you know, difficult to get. I mean, for your passport, what really put us off, made it difficult, was a 4 month processing time at least, as well as all the documents. Just so many more documents are required to get a British passport, as you would expect. And also, you have to actually send the original documents off for your British passport to the Liverpool office in the UK. Now, all your documents have to be original. So, I mean, if you're applying for a spouse visa for my wife at the same time, it was almost impossible, because I would have had to send off my passport, my wife's passport, even my son's Filipino passport, all have to go off originals. And they're kept there until the processing time, or until, you know, a decision's been made. I mean, it's just so difficult to do that when you're trying to get a spouse visa at the same time. Also, passports, the most important thing you have to try to prove is that, you know, in our case, our son was British, of course. So you'd have to have lots of photographs together at the birth. I'd have to prove that he was my son. So photos at the birth. Obviously, I'd have to be on the birth certificate. Obviously, I was, luckily. Photos together through the pregnancy. I mean, they're just looking for evidence, the proof that, you know, in my case, I was the father. Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that was most restrictive, really, at the time. And also, I would have had to go to an interview in London, you know, sort of interviewed and sort of make sure it's not fraudulent and that he was my son, and, you know, pretty personal questions about conception and things like that you have to be asked. Right of abode, I couldn't believe how easier it was, how much easier it was, and it gives my son, you know, not all of the same rights, but it did what we needed at the time. I just wanted to get my wife over here to the UK and get my son over here, and it did that. The right of abode goes in my son's passport, Filipino passport. My son's Filipino passport was very easy to get, very cheap. It's about £10 it cost to get his Filipino passport. Pretty quick. So I went in there, like a right of abode, and that lasts for the whole length of the Filipino passport, which is 5 years. So that's similar actually to a British passport in a way. I think a child's British passport lasts 5 years also. So yeah, I mean, and then the process is now I've got my son over here to the UK on the right of abode. Now we can process the passport. Now we can do the passport, and then the benefit of that is much easier to get a passport when my son is actually here. So I'm not applying, in his case, I'm not applying from the Philippines. I'm applying on his behalf from the UK. So a lot easier, not so restrictive, and quicker processing time. I'm not too sure why it's so much quicker processing time, but a lot quicker. I mean, I know people have. When I went to apply for my British passport, I think it took about 2 or 3 weeks. So the time difference is huge. And then we can get his passport now. So just wanted to share that video in case people aren't aware of this certificate of right of abode. Really, I mean, when I actually started the application for the passport, I actually paid for it and. Got references, because when you're applying, that's another difference. If you're applying for a passport, obviously you'd have to have a reference who's known you for 2 years, something like a doctor, or they got a list on some government website of references. A right of abode wasn't required. Yeah, I mean, the right of abode, I mean, literally when I did the application form, there was actually 2 documents that they wanted. One was my passport, his birth certificate, my son's birth certificate. That was 2 documents, and a letter of consent from the parents, and that was actually it. Actually, they requested, and I just thought it was quite strange. I only wanted 2 things, so I looked on the forums. Even though they did only sort of request 2 things, I added lots more things like birth certificates of my wife and myself, financial documents to show that I could sort of support him, photographs together, and all these sort of things that weren't necessarily required, that I added extra. There's no interview, no husband interview required either. Thankfully I got my wife and my son over here, which was the plan. The one thing I would say on the application form for the right of abode, some of the questions are quite confusing because they're basically written for an adult. If you're doing it for a son, for a child, that's written the questions for an adult. So it's got questions like, give your address for the last 5 years. Obviously it's only 1 month old, and it doesn't let you carry on to the next question until you've answered that question. So you could actually got to provide 5 years for a child who's only been born 1 month. Just quite frustrating, a bit annoying. Like, what do I say about this? So all I did in the end is just said, okay, he's been to this address for 5 years, even though he's a 1 month old. And then I made a note at the bottom saying, obviously he's 1 month old, so you know, but that's why I've answered the question like that. Some of the questions are quite frustrating like that. Basically written for an adult. Similar for the passport application, was much longer. Equally for quite frustrating questions similar to that. Yeah, I hope that's helped. Anyway, I can't think of too much more at the top of my head. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's all I can really think of. Most important business. I just wanted to make people aware of that right of abode, really, and much quicker, much easier to get if you're trying to get your son over here. So you can go the passport route, but those are the restrictions there. I would suggest getting your child over here first and then applying. Obviously it's more expensive, £382 did I say, compared to 53, but lots of benefits. So okay, I hope that helps someone, and any questions, just write them in the comments, and because I've got all my documents on my computer still, all the evidence that I provided, so might be able to help some people if they've got any questions. Okay, thank you.